As I was preparing for this talk, I was thinking, and we were talking, what would be a really good theme. And what dawned on me is every new company, and this is my second company, is struggling or is facing similar challenges in their early days. And one of those challenges is you have no name, we had no name, no credibility, no references, nobody knows about us, nobody's willing to really listen to us, and even when they listen, they're very unlikely to believe us or have any meaningful or would be predisposed to do business with us. So those are the common challenges. And last year when we started this company, very few people knew how to spell GDPR. Have you heard of GDPR? Raise your hands. Everyone knows of GDPR. Last year, people would say GDP what? That's what the GDPR was last year. So we had all kinds of different ideas. Everything is standard from PR to blogging, webinars, all kinds of things. And what I don't like personally doing is I don't like doing too many things. What I do like to, and my preference is, find what makes sense the most to for our target audience, for our target market, and then just focus all of our forces on that area. So what we decided to do over the first 9 months of building credibility for us as a company, as founders, as trying to build an expertise around us in a space that we had no past predisposition to, was targeted events and speaking and bringing highly accredited speakers and associate our name to them, because they speak, people will trust us more likely to trust us. And then if I speak next to great speakers, then my hypothesis was my message will be received a bit more credible. So what we have done first is we hosted 3 highly curated, highly targeted, private, super upscale mini conferences. And when I say targeted, it's literally only CISO, CPOs of specific companies. And we would, the target was to have 8 of them in a room, because there's only 12 of them in Canada. And we actually had 11 people of that target, from that target demographic in the room. And a few more slightly different titles, but very just. It happened for us and for our company to actually learn that not everyone has a CISO title or CPO. Some companies call it Chief Risk Officer, and that's the title we also learned how to target through the events. So we hosted the very first event, brought them into Shangri-La, brought top-notch expert, probably the best or the most known expert in Canada on that topic, and it was a blast. At the next event, when we were planning the second event, people were actually calling my cell phone and saying, Chief Privacy Officer of this bank, she moved on to a different role, I'm her replacement, do you have a place for me? So for us, it was actually a really good validation that we have the right message, we have the right audience that wants to come in and learn from us, and we're targeting the right people and we're doing the right things. So that was our second event. And the third mini conference that we launched was a bit larger. It was in the early spring of this year. It was on a theme of moving from just privacy and compliance, kind of ventured into AI and responsible AI. And what we've done is, again, brought in a couple of really good experts in the field, and had actually, we at that point had about 20 people registered. We had to qualify, and it's not that we wanted to turn people away, but we thought, like, who will be the best peer group in that room? Who will people really learn from being in that room? Not just from the speakers, but also network and connections that we'll help establish. And not to be selfish, not to be too blunt, we wanted to make sure that people, once they come in, they will have a really valuable experience to them. So that's what we tried to do. And then when we were planning our 4th conference, that as I'll mention next, what will happen is I got introduced to Chief Innovation Officer of one of the big 4 consulting firms that are all headquartered here in Toronto. Canadian offices. And he picked up the phone on a vacation and he gave me a rundown of our previous conference. He said, you had a really good people in the room. We were surprised that you had those people. Actually, how did you get them into the room? And we actually gained a client from that. So it was all the checkpoints for us. So that showed us that we're actually beginning to build the credibility in the target demographic that we want to be known to. And that led us to the next topic is we decided, okay, we've tried it successfully and done it pretty well with the small targeted conferences, so why don't we start scaling up? So we decided to organize part of the Right to Know Week. If you have not heard, it's now celebrated in 40 countries. The right of access to information, the right to know, and the right to privacy. And we decided to organize it in Canada. So in collaboration, we found partners with collaboration with Privacy Access Council of Canada and a few other organizations. We pulled it in together, hosting it this Thursday on the 27th, full-day event. It was unbelievable for me how we, a less than year-old company, managed to pull in 16 speakers, full-day event. It was sold out in 9 days. We had to actually move to a bigger venue to accommodate everyone, even the waiting list. So we had a pretty lengthy waiting list to start accommodating everyone. We attracted the best, probably some of the best privacy experts in the world, like Dr. Anna Kavukian and many others, speakers from the federal ministry, from City of Toronto, from some of the best firms, businesses, and political levels of government and regulators to speak at our conference that is pulled up by one little startup. So to summarize, the problem we faced was nobody knew about us, nobody would listen to us, and even if they would listen, they would unlikely believe our message. The options, we had a bunch of options. We selected private targeted events that are super, super targeted to the audience that we think is most likely to listen to us and most likely will be experiencing the problems that we're hoping to solve for them. And that led us to really, really accelerated growth of our credibility in our particular market. So hopefully this was a valuable lesson from us. Thank you. Do we have time for questions? Yeah. Good.
On here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you get the first 8 to 11 people to come to the first event?
How did we get the first? So it began with the message. Like, who are the people that we should be in front of? What do they care? So I spent actually, specifically, all of this last summer, I spent validating and speaking to, I don't know the exact number, maybe about 100 chief information security officers, chief privacy officers, heads of compliance in the US and UK. I learned what the message, what they talk about and how they talk about it. And then I found similar people in Canada, in downtown core. And I sent direct messages. And the message was around it was simple. Hey, we have this speaker or this speakers talk about this topic. I thought it would be interesting for you. Like, let me know if you want to attend. And people really appreciated that message. It was nice, short, concise.
Excellent talk. I just had a question. Do you think part of the reason that this approach worked really well was because privacy was so much in the news in the past year or so? Or do you think like it could have worked on any project?
Yeah, so I think it is why it worked for us. I think because it was a relevant topic to them at that particular time. Mm-hmm. But I think the approach is scalable to any other company facing the same problems. And the problems are, does the company actually solve the problem that some of the early adopters will be facing and want to solve? And who are they? You need to be, what I would suggest to know is, what are their titles? What are their companies? Can you reach to them? Can you reach out to them? Like, is there maybe LinkedIn message, maybe email, maybe in person? And then start testing it out. And actually, that was a really good way to test if our message resonates. Because if nobody would show up and nobody would raise their hand that I'm interested, then it's a message to me that nobody cares about that.
But I think one part of the reason that you could get that original group in was because it was so like weighing on everybody's mind that this is a concern that people are going to have more and more, and so they wanted to talk to each other about like what their approaches are going to be.
Yeah, I so the question is if they showed up or if it worked because it was such an important topic for them at that point. Correct, but the lesson for the startup founder was, or what I was looking for is, what is the message? How do I communicate that message? How do I position our company is to actually learn how they will respond to that? So I did spend about 3 months on preparing for it.
Okay.
So it was not just out of the blue, but it took some time to learn what they talk, how they talk about it, how they prefer to receive information about us.